Carlsson Price for Thursday, March 20th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. And this program, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Carlsson alongside Blake Price, Mike Rogerson, four-time Juno Award winner, hitting switches, conducting things. And we come to you on the day of the biggest game of the Vancouver Canucks season. And I know we have said that a couple of times in the last week, Calgary, Utah, but they only get bigger, and in fact, few will be bigger than this. It is a direct competitor, the St. Louis Blues, the beginning of a 6-game road trip. And as I'm sure you have heard, the Blues have an awfully soft schedule to close this season, so tied on points with the Vancouver Canucks. You got to get this one because you need a little bit of cushion, presuming St. Louis is going to keep up their hot ways, win some of these games against poor teams, and force the Canucks to do the same on the road trip and beyond. Let's start with our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, asking you, have the playoffs begun for the Vancouver Canucks? Do they begin tonight for the Vancouver Canucks? Yes, no, they've already begun. You can vote at the Carlsson Price X and YouTube channels. Price, what says you?
I mean, mathematically, we know that that's just not the case. We've already seen them sort of do points with Utah. They lose to Utah, but then they win their next big tough game against the Jets while Utah loses on the out-of-town scoreboard. So, 4-point games always seem bigger day of than maybe they are in the grand scheme of things. But it's twofold, I think, and for me, and I think for a lot of fans, in that there's the math of it, that it's just a 4-point game in terms of the math, but it's also just a big test. Like, this is a game that you should win. You need to win if you're the Vancouver Canucks. Are you capable of going out in these circumstances and getting that victory? Winnipeg might have let down a little bit, facing a team down the bracket, if you will. This team on the other side wants this game just as much as you do. So what do you look like? Do you look like you're ready? Can you play stiff? Can you play like it is the playoffs? So the how is almost as important as the math for me. And I'm going to be looking at how the Canucks play this game and if they belong in the playoffs.
Yeah, I hear you. And it would be an awful shame. And how many times have we said that this year, to follow up that fantastic win against the Winnipeg Jets with the stinker here tonight? And yet that's been the Vancouver Canucks this year. Wins where you sit back and go, wow, that's pretty good. Play like that, you can play with anyone in this league. And then immediately preceding or following, oh my God, what was that? That was, that was San Jose, Chicago, level hockey. So
not all seasons are journeys. Not all seasons are journeys. Like for a team like the Florida Panthers, like a season like this season, it's not a journey for them. They're just getting to the playoffs to see what they can do again. This season is a journey for the guys. So I don't mind that they learn how to play as they go along. And if they're finding themselves at the end of the season, that's just fine. But they have to show that they're finding themselves.
Yeah, I voted yes. I mean, the Calgary game last week, you could say it started then. I have very little quarrel with you. But, this, to me, you're a week later. You're several games forward. We now know the stakes. We now know St. Louis is tied with them. And, of course, that easy Blues schedule. So, yeah, this is one where if the Vancouver Canucks lose and lose in regulation, they're going to have to do some pretty great things down the stretch.
Yeah.
Here are the odds from Money Puck. Noah Strang of the Daily Hive in tweet here. If they beat the Blues in regulation, their playoff odds jump 15.5% to more than 50%, 52.7%.
Wow.
If they lose to the Blues in regulation, the playoff chances drop 12.3% down to 24.9%. So it's the difference between a better than 1 in 2 chance to a little bit less than a 1 in 4 chance of making the Stanley Cup playoffs for the second consecutive season if they lose this one. So,
and you mentioned the strength of schedule for the Blues. You know, you can't rely on other teams based on the teams that they're facing. You can't rely on the other teams to beat the Blues. You need to deal them a blow yourself. When you have direct agency over it, take advantage.
Well, and since we've referenced it so much, let's just go through this Blues schedule so you understand what we're looking at. After tonight, St. Louis hosts Chicago on Saturday, hosts Nashville on Sunday. Now, it's a back-to-back, but those are two of the worst, 4 teams in the NHL.
Yeah.
They host Montreal on Tuesday. Habs are playing better.
Yes,
Habs are on a playoff spot, but that's not a world beater, and you've got them at home. They're in Nashville next Thursday. Okay, then a little bit meatier bone. They're in Colorado a week from Saturday. But they come right back home for Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Colorado. And Detroit's fading, and Pittsburgh's awful. Then they're on the road to Winnipeg, Edmonton, Seattle. Okay, some tough tests there. And they close with that home game against Utah that we've talked to you about. That if it does come down to the Utah Hockey Club and the Blues, they've got them at home. You know the Canucks schedule here. Saturday at the Garden to face the Rangers. Monday in New Jersey. Wednesday against the Islanders. Friday in Columbus. Sunday against the Winnipeg Jets. Then home for Seattle, Anaheim, Vegas. Road trip Dallas, Colorado. And then home Minnesota, San Jose, Vegas. Boy, a lot of good teams there.
3 weak teams.
Vancouver.
That's it. The rest of the way, the Canucks have 3 weak teams. Everybody else is either a top table team or battling for a playoff spot.
St. Louis has 3 weak teams in the next week.
Yes, right.
They have Nashville twice and Chicago in the next week.
Yeah.
So, you can understand why the odds swing so severely there on Money Puck and the gravitas of this game. The daily poll question, a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi, trying to cheering them back to the top. EP40, everyone at the dealership rallying around the hometown hero. Every time he scores a point, you save $500 on a new or pre-owned vehicle. 2 points, $1,000. 4 points, $2K. You know how it works. You got to mention Harrison Price. The offer is valid until the next game day. Time to cheer EP40 back to the top. Score more, save more, more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey. Top story today brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Wineries. Showdown in St. Louis, tied on points for the final wildcard spot. Vancouver with a game in hand and coming off that enormous victory against the Winnipeg Jets. Talked about it already, but it's building time for these Canucks. And, of course, needing to offset the Blues' weak schedule down the stretch drive. We have seen morning skate, and here's how it lines up for Vancouver. Pettersson between Hoglander and Boeser. That line is really going. Pius Suter, speaking of going, between Jake DeBrusk and Kiefer Sherwood. More on Sherwood here in a moment. DeBrusk, hey, big games. You're known as a playoff guy, a big goal scorer. Need you tonight. Teddy Bluger between Drew O'Connor and Linus Karlsson. More on that in a second. With Nils Höglander between Joshua and Garland. Defense pairs Hughes and Myers. Marcus Pettersson and Philip Hronik, Derek Forbert, and Elias Jr. Pettersson. So a couple of things I want to note here. No Lekkerimaki.
Because of Garland's return.
Yeah, Garland's back, so Lekkerimaki, not Linus Karlsson, draws out. Do they have enough goals minus a natural goal scorer like Jonathan Lekkerimaki in the lineup? He can change the game with a shot. We saw that earlier in the season. We scored that beautiful goal coming down the left wing. Or did Linus Karlsson earn this opportunity with his strong game against the Winnipeg Jets on Tuesday? What says you?
Well, I'll say this. There was another opportunity available to Rick Tocchet, one that he chose not to go with, and that is Linus Karlsson down the middle for Nils Höglander and Jonathan Lekkerimaki in the lineup.
So my first instinct on that, has Linus Karlsson played a single shift at center in the NHL? Because
NHL,
this is
not
the wrong time to be experimenting with a guy in a more high responsibility position.
Yeah.
So I would be stunned if that was even considered by the coaching staff.
Yeah.
If you want to argue why isn't Ratu here instead of Oman, because of his face-off prowess, because he gives you a little bit more offensively, fair enough. I've got time for that argument and consideration. But they seem happy with Nils Oman, even though he does win face-offs, and gives you nothing offensively.
He literally just eats up minutes, and in important games, you're right. Maybe you're just okay with that if you're Rick Tocchet, but I think it's a nod. Certainly, the fact that Oman is starting again. We'll see if these throughout the game, but the fact that he's starting with Joshua and Garland,
Blake,
leads you to believe that you're either mailing it in on that line, you're protecting Garland's time because you don't think he's 100% or anything close to it. It's just it's a peculiar line makeup. You put Ratu on that
because
line, immediately you've got some hope.
Yeah, I mean it's peculiar because you've put him with 220 goal scorers from last year.
Yeah.
Or close. Like those two wingers on a team that's low on offense to begin with, and I realize Joshua's had a poor year, but those two wingers need to be part of the solution offensively. Like that's not a traditional fourth line, and I understand. Yeah, you're sheltering Garland because he's banged up, but I just sort of wonder, even if you're not going to call up Ratu, and you want to play Nils Oman there, fair enough. Why wouldn't you move one of those wingers further up the lineup? Or does he just feel like Joshua's been such an empty offensive player for him this year that he's better off with O'Connor, who has scored recently, on a line with Bluger and Karlsson? Anyways, as we know with Rick Tocchet, we could spend the next hour debating all this in the span of 10 to 15 minutes of the first period. It could all be moot. What I will say, Philip Hedl continues to be out, everybody, and Tocchet said earlier this week he's doing better, but I don't think you're going to be able to count on him tonight. You're not going to be able to count on for sure. You don't count on him tonight. I don't think you'll be able to count on him Saturday in his return to Madison Square Garden.
Which is too bad.
Demko manned a net this morning, but he is not going to be in uniform tonight. Arturs Shilovs will back up Kevin Lankinen in the goal. Tocchet was asked about his Thatcher Demko plans. We kicked this around earlier this week, and what he did say is that he's leaning, because when they've brought Thatcher back off the injured list in the past, it has typically been he spends the first game as a backup and then he gets the cage. Tocchet is a little bit more ain't got time to bleed. If he's ready, it sounds like Rick Tocchet is going to play him. Here's Coach.
Emmer had a really good practice the other day. I know it's a morning skate. You got the full net. It's one of those. He's obviously getting close, but what date? I don't have an exact date.
The two times he came back this year, he backed up first. So are we getting close to that maybe, where he might?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought of that. I think when he's ready to go, whether you play him. Like if he's ready to go, I don't know. He has to back up first before he plays. I'm not quite sure about that at this time of the year. But if he's healthy, we got to stick him in.
Yeah, and at this time of year is the operative. Like it's not like you need to get the guy. What's he getting out of backing up? He gets a great seat for the game. That's all. Like that doesn't really do you much. If he's ready, as Rick said, then he plays. But I still don't know that I heard something in there, Matt, that leads me to believe they're going to use him on Saturday versus the Rangers. It still seems like it's the game after.
I still think that's doubtful. And obviously, if Lankinen plays great tonight, I think you're probably forced to go with the hot hand. If Lankinen struggles tonight, I do wonder.
If he's showing signs of the workload fatigue that we have seen with Kevin Lankinen, you'd be tempted.
Tocchet has said that on a couple of occasions this year. I got to make sure I get him rest. His level drops when I play him too much. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you're not playing Arturs Shilovs unless you're forced to play Archers.
No, not in these must-win games, no.
Absolutely. Binnington versus Lankinen. The Blues have rotated goalies in 13 games. Young Hofer has done well there. They've rotated goalies in all of their 13 games since the Four Nations, so Binnington is well rested. He's been great recently on home ice. His home ice numbers this year, 281 goals against, 900 save percentage, but much better of late here. Of course, he led Canada to the Four Nations Championship with that absolutely stunning performance in the final against Team USA. St. Louis 9-2-2, the best team since the Four Nations break. I'm sure you've heard of that. And riding a 3-game win streak. Here's Coach on what they've got to do against the hottest team in the NHL.
Game's the most important, right? That's what you think every game you play in. They're a hot team, so we got to make sure that we take care of the puck. We know they're a really good rush team, and they have a lot of swagger and confidence right now. So when you play teams like this, when there's a lot of swagger, you got to make sure you don't give any freebies. I think that's something that we got to really dial in tonight. No freebie goals. We have to play smart but aggressive.
He throws that aggressive in right at the end. And I almost wonder if he threw it in to placate the critics. Do you think we're looking at to steal a soccer phrase, Blake, a park the bus type of game here from Rick Tocchet? Like, do you think even after the 6 goals against Winnipeg, he's going to run home to mama here and basically say, guys, tonight we defend, and we hope to score a power play goal?
I mean, I'm of two minds. I mean, that's up until last game, I would say yes, absolutely. I hope that there was some learning versus Winnipeg and that he realized maybe this team has a tad more skill than he has given them credit for. And that maybe, and I wonder if that's also what that aggressive thing at the end was about of, hey, I want them to be responsible. I want them to do everything that I've been teaching them all season long, but we do need a goal to win. We can't win 0-0. So,
you could. I mean, you get to the shootout.
You theoretically can. I don't think that's a game plan for this team right now.
No, I sure hope not.
Yeah. So
But,
I think he's trying to leave. I mean, again, guys like Nils Höglander, guys like Boeser right now, like he said about Boeser, like go out and get the goal. Like,
yeah.
At all costs, don't worry so much about what I've been asking of you. Keep it in the back of your head, but get me the goal. So I think he's trying to walk that narrow path of responsibility. But guys, can we get an extra goal?
Pretty please.
Yes.
What are our friends at Yellowdog and Neighborhood up to this week?
Cheap beer. It's all about cheap beer, Matt. And right now they've got specials galore, like the Chase My Tail tall can 4-packs on special for the month of March. You can look for it on sale at your private and your government liquor stores. Go check it out from Yellow Dog.
Couple of players I want to pull out and highlight here. Nils Höglander, 8 points in his last 13 games since the Four Nations break. There's a terrific story today on Pass It to Bulis from Daniel Wagner about Nils Höglander. And the reason I think it's terrific is because Daniel got Rick to basically admit how Hoglander has been unlocked here. I'll read the quote. This is Tocchet. Hoggy told me this a month ago. He just wants 1 or 2 points. I think since we've been giving him 1 or 2 points, he's really starting to play well for us. I think the last month he's been one of our best forwards in overall intensity. You give him 5 points, he gets in trouble. So we'll keep it to 1 or 2 points for Hoggy. We all knew that there was talent there with Nils Höglander.
Mm-hmm.
Hands, skating. Of course, a little bull in a china shop, right? He's plays bigger than his size. He's a past effort, intensity, heart. There's a lot of great positive attributes to Hoglander as a hockey player. Hockey IQ is not one. When he gets in trouble, it's because he's overthinking the game. going to use a golf analogy here, but Blake, you and I have both at different times in our golfing careers played golf and played golf swing. And the difference being when you're playing golf swing, you're thinking about feet, grip, takeaway, turn, all the different elements of the golf swing, and that can really get you in trouble. If you swing the club freely, confident in where all those component parts are, you tend to hit the ball a little better. So I'm so glad to hear that Rick Tocchet has come to this revelation. I'm so glad to hear that Nils Höglander flagged it for him. There is part of me that wonders what took so bloody long. You've been coaching the player for 2 years. But then I think, okay, maybe Nils Höglander, a young player who's been in and out of the lineup, healthy scratch before, in North America here, second language, maybe he just felt a little reticent to go to Tocchet and the coaching staff and say, like, look, I'm getting overloaded here with information. I've got to keep it simpler.
Well, still a very young player, still a lot of development still left in this player. And I think it was maybe foolhardy by the coaching staff to expect him to develop at that rate and correct all of his sins. Like tell him the 2 cardinal sins, don't murder anybody, don't steal anything. We'll work on the other stuff, the fine tuning a little bit later. Just the 2 things that you see in the player that he's doing wrong every time in every situation, eliminate those 2 things. And the rest of the stuff we're going to work on down the road. But there's too much good available in this player. There's too much available to you as a team when this player is on to bench him, to send him to the AHL, as we've seen, in previous seasons. You've got too much potential there. Don't flush that potential. Don't flush the speed and the aggressiveness that you get out of this player. He's a lot more ready than the guys down on the farm are. So keep him in the lineup. And focus on the 1 or 2 things. And he's still going to make the odd mistake. He is. I mean, you think about, was it 2 or 3 games ago, he takes the late penalty, 3rd period penalty, because he lost the puck and he reached back and trips the player in front of the benches there. Wasn't a great moment, but he backed it up later in the period with a couple of great plays. So it's going to be, 1 step forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But he's still worthwhile in the lineup every single night. And you just got to find a way to limit the mistakes and yet accept a couple of them.
And look, we've had this conversation so many times, I'm reticent to go there myself. But if what we're seeing over the last month and what we saw during a large swath of last season when Nils Höglander cracked 20 goals, if this is the player we go forward with, number 1, that makes a world of difference to this Vancouver Canucks playoff push, because you're talking about a team right now that, as we all know, doesn't have a ton of goals in it and is also now missing a centerman who gets them playing with speed and gets them into the offensive zone in Filipino. So the Canucks are light on scoring and scoring wingers. And then secondly, Blake, makes us feel a whole lot better about the go forward with Nils Höglander on that contract extension.
That contract.
Right? Because when he signed it, we thought, great work by the Vancouver Canucks here. A 20-goal scorer, and on the eve of the season, you got him to commit to a 3-year deal, paying him $3 million per. If he comes out and has that season again, my God, what a steal. And if he can actually improve from here, which look, there's a reasonable expectation of that given his age. He's not even 25. $3 million the year after and the year after, that's going to look like an absolute steal, especially if the cap is going up. And sure enough, lo and behold, it did. And then Nils Höglander sucked for about 40 games.
Yeah.
And we were even having people like Darren Dreger tell us, because we all thought, is this a trade candidate? He hasn't really been a Tocchet player in the past. And we had guys like Darren Dreger telling us, I think there are some GMs that are a little daunted by the ticket going forward. And we're like, whoa, that sure changed.
Well, we said that in November and December. We were like, I think you might have to look at trading Nils Höglander. He's got some value still and decent contract going for. But the longer the drought went on, all of a sudden you're like, what is this player now?
We started seeing get the contract off the books in our mentions. Like he would be the next guy that they jettison, admit the mistake on, quote unquote. So. Yeah, I mean,
and they're not out of the woods yet here, Matt. Like,
no, they're not. No, they're absolutely not.
It's been a nice 8-game stretch. It's been a nice 8-game stretch.
Well, it's been more than an 8-game stretch. It's been like an 11. Yeah, it's been like an 11 game.
Play goes back beyond the 8 games, but the production is really just the last 8 games. But he was doing a lot of good things. People said that before the Four Nations break. Hey, there's signs here that he's playing better.
Fair.
But if he finishes the season, he's got 14 games left. If he finishes the season strong, the totals won't look that great. There's no rescuing the totals, but you'll know, okay, he put together 25 good games at the end of the season. And that's something to hold on to.
Well, but that brings me to my next point on him. Of course, he was healthy scratched in the playoffs last year too. Yeah. So, that becomes, if they make it there, another significant
But that's not happening this year. You don't have the depth.
Fair enough. Yeah. But here's the thing. The way the Vancouver Canucks are structured, and particularly if you're moving off Brock Boeser, and particularly if you're moving off Boeser and Pius Suter, Nils Höglander has to be a thing for this team going forward. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that he has to produce at a top 6 level, although I think he's capable, and that would be nice. But he absolutely has to be an every night, count on him, top 9, middle 6 player. And look, if he is part of the solution for Elias Pettersson, even better. Yep. So I think you'll see big night for Nils Höglander here tonight. Okay,
it's a big night for a lot of guys that have shown some sign, like Boeser. Like there's candidates to finish strong. Can rescue the team. Like you guys hot, two. Nobody's hot. Maybe actually is a little easier than the point game.
Partner, we're having a little bit of a problem with your connectivity there, Blake. So let me just jump in. Yeah, perfect. Look, obviously Brock Boeser is the one that stands out there. No question about it. The other guy I want to highlight tonight is Kiefer Sherwood for a number of reasons. He's got points in 2 of his last 3. He had a multi-point game against Chicago. Okay, it's just Chicago. Mm-hmm. Hasn't scored since the Minnesota game, so he's gone 6 without a goal here. And in fact, was a total outage in the month of February. Had just the 2 assists, not a single goal. That was after being, one of the free agent bells of the ball, right? Through the first 3 months of the season. You looked at his totals in October, November, December, and you were sitting there going, what a steal for the Vancouver Canucks. Guy's playing out of his mind. Guy's scoring goals, and he's leading the NHL in hits by a country mile. This should be a Kiefer Sherwood style game. This is one of the reasons you went out and got Kiefer Sherwood. A playoff style game. Physicality. Forecheck. Tight spaces. Being a pest to the opposition. Making their defense feel it each and every time they go back to retreat.
In a Predators jersey, we saw it. Yeah,
absolutely. He's got 26 even strength points. He doesn't play a lot of power play, of course. It's 3rd amongst forwards after Garland and Pettersson. We know what the Canucks players told Patrick Allvin after he signed him last year. Boy, we hated playing against that guy. Here's a night where Kiefer Sherwood can further burrow into the hearts of Canucks fans, show his worth to his teammates, to the management group, because you anticipate that sort of intense physical game tonight against a Blues team that has some pretty sizable defensemen, right? They have some big boys back there and guys who have played a ton of hockey, Parayko and Suter, Falk, like they're Fowler. They've got a defense group that has played a ton of hockey. So go in there and make yourself known. Play a loud game if you're Kiefer Sherwood tonight.
And they're not going to play a loud game in terms of a heavy game. The Canucks are not a heavy team. So they're going to have to do it a little bit more pestilently. And Luke Gazdick was telling a story on Sportsnet a couple of days back about Connor Garland stealing his glove during the middle of a game back when he was playing. Like do those sorts of things, and you play as heavy as you can, but they're not going to rattle the glass. They're not going to intimidate the other team, but you can annoy the hell out of the other team. And guys like Sherwood and Garland can all do. Joshua's going to play a big role here. If he's not going to score, show the other attributes of your game.
Yeah, one of your former teams, right? If you're Dakota Joshua, so
yeah.
Let's see it. That Canucks penalty kill unit, we've talked about it here for a while. Saw it visually yesterday on X. 82.6%, fourth in the league right now. They were 17th last year at 79%, 32nd 2 years ago, 71.6. And they had to work to get to 71.6, 75 just shy of the previous year. The Blues power play is right there in the middle of the pack. They are 17th net power play. They are 18th power play percentage, just regular. And then the penalty kill side of things for St. Louis, Blake, they're 29th in the league. So do you have the ability to affect the game on the power play like we saw Tuesday against Winnipeg? So many postseason games, right, are determined on the power play. We saw that in the Edmonton series last year, where Vancouver did a very tidy job of keeping Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid relatively at bay at even strength. But man, when they get the opportunity with the man advantage, do they make you pay? This has been a poor St. Louis penalty kill unit for the season. Can the Vancouver Canucks, riding a power play that has looked a little better than it has for most of the season, can they find an opportunity tonight with the man advantage?
So generate those chances. Move your feet. Every single play. Like if you're Rick Tocchet, you're screaming that from the top of your lungs before the game. Move your feet. Get the calls. And then, go to work.
Do not fail on the power play for a lack of movement and aggressiveness. If you fail on the power play because the goaltender's making shots, you're not able, or stopping shots, you're not able to corral some of those rebounds. Hey, fair enough. Even if there's a wonky pass here and there, still be a threat. Don't be happy, resigned to being a perimeter stagnant power play unit tonight. Make them work.
You're talking about when they're on the power. I'm talking about to get the power play, because we've seen this team play so passively, play so defensively, that they only get one or two power play chances a night. Don't move your feet during 5-on-5 play to get the calls, so that you get 4 chances on a night, and then you can almost put it in ink that you get a goal.
I hear you. And then when you get I want to see Hughes super aggressive tonight coming down off the point. I want to see Hughes attacking that net. We know he's got a very accurate and precise shot. We know he wants to get to 20 goals. He's on 60. I think tonight is your night where Quinn Hughes has to be the maestro, has to be the straw that stirs on that power play. Defense score. I want to highlight this as well, because I've liked Victor Mancini for the most part. I think there's real promise and potential there with a guy that big who's got some tools athletically, decent hands and feet. But I do think they have it right, that in terms of the 6 defensemen, that Forbort has been such a key part of your penalty kill unit that he has to play, and that Elias Pettersson, DPD Jr., has to play as well, even if that's on the offside, and we talked about that going into the Winnipeg game. J-Pat broke it out. 16 NHL games so far, just 1 penalty for Elias Pettersson, and it was a matching roughing minor against Colorado on February 2nd. He has not put them shorthanded at all in 16 games, Blake, and that's why when we talk about Elias Pettersson reminding us a little bit of Chris Tanev when he broke in, Alexander Edler when he broke in, that there just was a calmness, a poise, and an ability to play the game within the boundaries of the rules that that earmarked an NHL player early on. This kid is an NHL player. I hope to not jinx him here tonight, but that's why I think he's got to play tonight, even on the offside, and even if he doesn't bring the pure size of Victor Mancini. Plus, he brings some physicality and intensity as well.
Considering how rambunctious he is, it is an astonishing statistic. And with regards to Mancini just going forward, this is a guy, remember, he hasn't had a Rick Tocchet training camp. He comes in middle of the season to understand exactly what Rick Tocchet is asking and Adam Foote are asking of him. That's tough to immediately he wasn't an everyday player in New York. To immediately snap your fingers and say, you're an everyday player now, and it's a new system, and we need you to be perfect because these are meaningful games down the stretch. So I don't mind Mancini watching every other night or every, 2 out of 3 nights, even at this stage of his Canuckdom. Elias Pettersson's been good. Keep him in there. I don't mind it at all.
All right, let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by our friends at Greta, a fantastic spot to catch all the games home and away, your steps from the stadium and arena. 50 West Cordova. They got weekly drink specials. Try all the street food on the menu, the poutine, the smash burger extraordinary, the incredible arcade that encircles the bar. Greta, where the games, let the games begin at Greta, 50 West Cordova. We've got Patrick Johnston of the Province and PostMedia coming up. He's next. Looking forward to the game. Also talk Linus Karlsson with him, Nils Höglander, Lekkerimaki. And Rob Williams is going to stop by, also on the stretch drive. Rob has some information on season tickets for next year and a new slogan that the Canucks are trotting out. So that's all coming up on today's program. Also look forward to that Canada-Mexico game tonight in CONCACAF.
Huge day.
Nations League. Yes, absolutely. Baseball season just a week away. Whitecaps undefeated going into the weekend. So tons going on here in the world of sport, including basketball, Blake. You broken out any John Tesh basketball rock?
I have
recently?
not. And is it just me, or has March Madness been so quiet this year? Like, it just feels like March Madness is not as there's not a lot of madness. No, I know, but just the build up.
It's like 5 games or 4 games here.
I don't feel it.
Okay. So that's all coming up on the show. Time now for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. I picked some futures yesterday, Blake. Looking forward to the NCAA tournament. So why don't you lead us off? Blake's been hot of late, it must be said.
I picked a future as well. I was Jonathan David yesterday, so we'll see how that comes up. Today, I'm hoping for building for the Vancouver Canucks. I'm hoping for somebody to seize the brass ring. And you talked about Nils Höglander. I'm talking about Nils Höglander. An anytime goal. Nils, make it happen. Plus 550 for Nils Höglander to score tonight.
Very good value. We just talked about playoff style game. Why not back a playoff style player? Kiefer Sherwood, third in even strength points. Great value at plus 500 as an anytime goal scorer tonight. Breaking news from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner. Every face-off, hat trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, every suspenseful minute in between is amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app today. Use code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 plus or older. Please play responsibly. Patrick Johnston coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
This segment brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers. And my favorite part about driving electric vehicles is you don't have to give up the fun just because you're being responsible, just because you're getting the glory of being in the HOV lane full time and passing by every gas station on the planet. Doesn't mean you're giving up fun. Go take the brand new BZ4X from Toyota for a test drive and remind yourself that driving can be fun. This is a great vehicle with a ton of room, yet the right size for Pacific Zone parking spots as well. It has it all. You're going to love it. And up to $6,500 in eligible rebates. You can finance at 3.29% APR over 36 months. It's got it all. All they're telling you, take it for a test drive. You're going to fall in love.
Patrick Johnston. Oh, sorry, Blake.
Okay.
Of course you're shopping Toyota. Patrick Johnston covers the Canucks for the province and PostMedia. He joins us on Thursdays.
Couldn't wait to get me in here, could you, Matt?
That's it. Chomping at the bit, Patrick, to have you in and ask you if you feel like the playoffs begin tonight. Have they already begun? And what's your faith level in these Vancouver Canucks making it for a second straight year?
Oh, my goodness. Well, you watch them on Tuesday night, and you're like, okay, this is the team. This is what they are. And then you remember how they played against Utah, and they were tired, I guess. But also how they started against Chicago with not a lot of shots in the first period. I am a sort of an anxious confidence. Is that a thing? Is that allowed? Obviously, it's a 3.5 way race at this point. Utah has some ground to make up, but Utah is probably playing the best of the 4 teams in the mix. I don't have a lot of time for Calgary. I haven't all year, but they've hung around. St. Louis is kind of the same. They're sort of a team that's between where it really needs to be and what it has been. And yet there they are. So yeah, obviously big game tonight. The Canucks, you go to any of the sites, they're sort of somewhere between 35 to 50% chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, Dom's still at 50.
Yeah, which feels fair. They have the toughest schedule still, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't double checked, but when I last checked, which was a week or two ago, they still have the toughest schedule remaining. So they will have to work hard. And if they do it, I suppose you can buy some credence in the idea of anything can happen. You get in.
We know Winnipeg didn't play well, but that effort, but Winnipeg not playing well can only get so low. They've got a pretty high floor team.
Yeah,
they play like that most nights, they're going to win those hockey games, right?
The Canucks outskated them.
Yeah.
There was a Brock Boeser had a couple shifts where you're like, why doesn't he do this all the time? Right. And that's not a criticism. It's sort of like it's a reminder of the reality of Brock Boeser, which is not the greatest skater in the world, but a smart hockey player with really good hands, and who thrives entirely on confidence. And he has not been feeling very confident lately for a variety of reasons. But that was as good as he's looked in probably since maybe the playoffs last year. A player who really can step up in the moment. And so now the question is, can he carry this forward? Elias Pettersson has looked a lot better in the last 2 weeks. Can he keep that going forward? You think so. He's being paid to be that guy. And certainly the sort of poise that he's bringing to the game, I think, shows that he has found a new way. I've got a little story coming on Friday. I did talk to him about facing the Rangers and that guy. And he didn't shy away from it. He's looking forward to the face-off challenge. And didn't obviously want to get into the details of what the split was, but a player who sees a challenge in front of him. Obviously the weekend's a huge test for him. So, every game, we've heard this before. Every game matters. Games that matter, meaningful games in March. Here we are.
I would love to hear what is said in that face-off talk,
right,
between the two of them. Huh?
To be a fly on the wall.
Oh boy, because they didn't really encounter at the Four Nations. We were waiting for. They had one face-off against each other, I think, but it was pretty benign. And they didn't really cross paths on the ice much. Lekkerimaki looks out Linus Karlsson looks in. Your thoughts on one Swede for the other tonight in the biggest game of the season?
Well, there was that moment where John Lekkerimaki had the boom lowered on him, and it was a reminder of where he needs to get to be a full-time, impactful NHLer, which he needs, I guess, needs a little more sense, a little more strength. For whatever reason, I mean, we watched Linus Karlsson, I think, before Christmas, and I remember turning to J-Pat and going, I think this is it. Like, we're not going to see this again. And now here he is with an NHL one-way deal. Listen, this coaching staff is a big fan of the details he brings. He is not the world's most exciting skater, but he has produced. He knows how to play the game. He has produced in the American Hockey League. He has come a long way from where he was in junior. I mean, he was not, let's put it this way. When the Canucks traded for him, which was a sort of back-of-the-napkin idea by, I think, the analytics group. I think it was a J-Wall credit some of him there. He hadn't been on their amateur list, right? Like, he was just a guy that he had not stood out at all in Sweden. Maybe a miss for that, but in the end they said, let's throw a dart. If we're going to throw a dart, we're bailing on Jonathan Dahlin. If we're going to throw a dart, here's a guy to throw a dart at. And this is sort of a J-Wall, Aiden Fox joint, as I understand it. And from that era, and let's take a look and see what we can get out of this. And clearly the kid has the right character, because he turned himself into not just an effective AHLer, but he has found his way to an NHL one-way contract. There's still lots I'd like to see more from him to be a regular NHL player, but Rick Tocchet likes the way he works on the boards. You can see the size and stature of the player. If you want to understand, sort of how much more, I suppose, permanent his role on this team is, you just look at where he is now sitting in the dressing room. He is sitting in Bo Horvat's old stall right by the exit to the back area where the showers are and whatnot. Like, he is not sitting in that. Normally when you walk in the room where the media comes in, which would be to the left of where they tend to do all the video on-camera scrums, there's a couple seats there where it tends to be players that are kind of floating in and out, although Dakota Joshua likes sitting there. But usually there's a couple stalls or the extra goalie or whatever. And that's kind of where a guy like Karlsson would be parked. Lekkerimiki's been sitting there. So they put Karlsson way over by Philip Hedl and Brock Boeser and Pius Suter and Elias Pettersson and all those guys. So he's a player that is going to play. I mean, clearly his contract tells us, but he's going to play a lot more games, and there is a reason why he's in the lineup. He does not have the hands of Jonathan Lekkerimaki, but I think he's got more.
Does it boil down to two moments from the last game? He takes that hit to make the assist.
Yes.
And Lekkerimaki gets robbed on the wraparound. Like, if those two moments don't occur, is the opposite happening here tonight?
I mean, I think you're looking at also a St. Louis team that's sort of got that reputation of being big and physical and what have you, right? So what are we trying to do here? What are the matchups we're looking for here? How can we put, how hard is it going to be to put Lekkerimaki in a position to succeed? I mean, that's possibly me overthinking it, possibly the coaching staff overthinking it, but here we are. And I get it.
Okay.
I get it. Lekerimaki's getting there. He's close, but there's still more to sort of build on this play.
My question is, are we drunk off 6 goals against Winnipeg? Do you have enough offense in the lineup to be taking out a one-shot natural goal scorer?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I mean, it is a bit of how do you line this team up? I mean, to me, it's more like the Nils Oman with Dakota Joshua and Connor Garland, which is sort of, I mean, if you're picking spots and you're making choices, I mean, Jake DeBrusk needs a guy to play with, and Pius Suter's a pretty good centerman. Kiefer Sherwood's in the mix somehow. I mean, he works hard. He was never going to sustain that scoring pace. Kiefer Sherwood is probably too far up the lineup, but they're dealing with the fact that Phil Hedl is out. But
he's had great assists lately. Sherwood,
he's played. Listen, don't get me wrong. I love the player, but really, just to Matt's question, in the end, this is far from a perfect lineup. You should not look at the win on Tuesday and saying this is who the team really is. Like, no, that was the high watermark of this team, right? Like, that's as good as it gets. This is a team that has some talent and has some skill, but is lacking, needs at least one more centerman, that's for sure, and probably needs another winger. And so, they're going into this game, a big, huge playoff game, a big, huge playoff push, where they are they need a bit of everything. And I don't know if Jonathan Lekkerimaki, as much as we are excited by his shot and his offensive instincts, and listen, that wraparound should have been a goal. Most goalies don't stop that, but Connor Hellebuck is going to win the best and is going to be in the Hart conversation for stops like that. And the kid will learn, and he probably will go a little bit quicker next time and won't let that happen. He is a guy that will get better. He's getting there. He is not there yet. So at the same time, yes, we shouldn't get drunk off 6 goals, but you also shouldn't get drunk off Jonathan Lekkerimaki and who he might yet be.
Are you worried about the physicality part? Not only tonight, but going forward? Like, is this a stiff enough team to win in the playoffs and win in these big games?
I guess so. I mean, there's an element of this team that is, certainly we've seen the way that Sherwood plays, and that's a guy that brings it every night, no matter what happens. I think Drew O'Connor has been a bit underrated in this. Obviously we all see the wheels, but he is mixing it up every night, right? Like, there's a guy that plays hard, plays fast. But there isn't that much. There is no dog in the middle of the ice. Like, Elias Pettersson plays hard, will throw hits, but is not known for that. And Peter Suter and Teddy Bluger and Niels Oman work hard and are smart players, but none of them are that physical. They're not physical guys. So no, you're right. I mean, Blake, you're right. You also don't want to overcook the importance of it, but still, you're right. There is that element of, can we just grind the other team into dust? And that is not a lineup that is built for that.
I'm drunk on Nils Höglander over the last month.
We all are.
But particularly because of what I heard from Rick Tocchet this week. And look, Nils Höglander has a lot of redeeming traits as a hockey player. He's got hands, he moves, he's feisty, energy, effort, heart, a lot of those things. But the one thing that I think was a knock on Hoglander as a draft prospect and has proved true in the National Hockey League and accounts for some of his inconsistency is that I'm just not sure this is an instinctual high hockey IQ kid.
No.
And Tocchet says this week, Hoglander came to him about a month or two and said, basically, you're overloading me with information. I want one or two things to think about. And since then, Tocchet and the coaching staff has dialed it back in terms of instruction, and Hoglander has taken off. And what I love about it, Patrick, is you're an educator.
Technically,
you have to coach and teach some kids differently than other kids, right? And it seems like they have found their sweet spot in terms of Nils Höglander, what he can handle, what he can handle, and how to get the best out of him.
Yeah, and the note from Tocchet about exactly that. I mean, I think it goes two ways. It's I think they're giving the player the credit for recognizing, how to listen. But going back to Rogla, like, he was a guy that he would show up with all these different ideas, but never knew how to necessarily. I've been told this, never necessarily knew how to focus on the idea. What are the priorities? And as he, so it's been a kind of a leaps and bounds, but occasionally having to fall back growth process for this player. And, I asked Petey, credit to Daniel Wagner, beat me to the punch, because this was a topic I think we both obviously had. He wrote the story first. My story's coming up today on Thursday. But I asked Petey, I said, what has been his, why has Hoagie been so good lately? He goes, well, he wins pucks. And I said, why? He said his legs. Pete just went, he's so strong. Mm-hmm. And that is coaching, right? You look at a player and you say, how can I make you better in a way that maybe you didn't even imagine you could be? And that has clearly, they've hit something here. They've come back. The guy was obviously a goal scorer last year, 24 goals. He knew what he was doing. We knew he had a nose for the net. He found a role last year. This year he's looked lost. Obviously the team as a whole looked lost. But lately, they made sense. Him and Boeser and Patterson have not played together a lot, but they've been intriguing. And over the 3 years I was looking at, 11, they played, I think, 110, 111 minutes together at 5-on-5, 57% Corsi. That's not a huge sample size. You want to see where this goes. but the early signs are promising, and they make sense given the way Pettersson plays and the way Boeser plays and the way Hoglander, you would think would fit on that line, and the way it's worked. Again, you want to get drunk on one game or two games. The way it's worked has worked the way you thought it would, which is exactly that straight line. Hoglander, go get the puck, keep your stick on the ice. The other two guys will do, the crafty work, and it's worked.
But they catch him in flight a lot. Like Pettersson catches him in flight a lot, and also, as we've said countless times, he makes Pettersson skate faster for whatever reason. He just makes Pettersson's feet move, and maybe he's having that effect on Boeser. Maybe that's why we saw Boeser's feet moving a little bit more. For some reason, he infects them.
Yeah, I think infection is a good word. You're right. Like the energy is always there, right? Like even when he was struggling to finish, I would say generally he has skated fast. It's about focusing the player and giving him tasks and say, this is what you're doing, this is what you're doing this week. And Talkett sort of suggested on that. Like that was kind of the implication of what he was saying, was that here's a player that I think both sides recognized. Here's your assignment for, this week. This is what you're working on. This is what you're doing in the games. Do this and hitting on key phrases. And if they're able to continue to do that, then this is going to work out great. And if it doesn't, well, they'll just keep trying to figure out how to make him the best player he can be for the moment.
We also sometimes forget how young Nils Höglander is. Like he's younger than Linus Karlsson and Max Sasson.
Yeah,
that's how young he is.
No, it's a worthwhile project. Yeah. Like he could be a really good player.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
of course, he's got the extension kicking in next year. So Demko skated this morning. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we're going to. I'm not sure if we're going to count that as a practice towards the 2 to 4 practices that Talkett wants. You can edify me on that, Peach. But assuming it does, are you thinking Thatcher Demko could be rushing to the rescue here, or to be an option in goal at some point as early as Saturday or next week? What says you?
So when we look at the calendar, so the Canucks show us, they are under the CBA, you're required to declare your calendar at the beginning of every month to your team, saying there's 4 days off. These are the declared 4 days off, and they are immovable unless there's like a unanimous vote to change it, which almost never happens. Now, when you look at the calendar, the Canucks apparently did not declare their 4th day off. They left it as an option. It could be tomorrow in New York, or it could be on Sunday in New York, which was an interesting variable to me. Now, they do play a midday game on Saturday, which leads you to think that they will probably practice tomorrow in New York. However, they've obviously left that as an option.
They didn't practice yesterday, which was
a travel day. They almost never do that one, because it's. St. Louis is further than you realize. They had.
I know it's far, but I just.
So
they didn't travel tomorrow or yesterday, and then you can have the off day before the early start Saturday.
Yeah, it's just anyway. That's what they went with, and I imagine it has something to do a bit with the time change and all that. But anyway, so they have this opening. They could practice tomorrow. I don't know. Rick Tocchet talked about, the other day, it was good to get him on the ice before Winnipeg. That was his first kind of quote unquote full session. So he's had 2 morning skate sessions, which aren't the same thing, but he's seeing shooters. And I think it's the same as we heard, in the fall. He needs to feel some bumps, and he needs to feel some pressure in front of the net like you would get in a practice. So it seems to me if they practice tomorrow, then if he doesn't play on Saturday, it's hard to see him not playing on Monday in New Jersey. But we'll see. It has not been a rush. He's obviously feeling a lot better. You can just tell sort of his mood and attitude seems upbeat and positive. We haven't talked to him because goalies don't talk on game days, even those aren't the rules say they're supposed to.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the guessing is that he seems very, very close.
Can I ask this question? Please tell me they determine these off days with the help of sports science and if not a sleep doctor, someone.
No, that's like that.
All right,
that
like it isn't the coach just
Oh no. The whole thing is hilarious. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, Matt, by the way. Just, you go way back to the guys like Willie Mitchell mocking, trying to figure out what your sleep patterns were. The game has changed so far that all these guys get it. They all understand the science. Rick Tocchet is not a dinosaur on this stuff. So that sort of half decade where, Benning and Trevor Linden were somewhat skeptical of it all. I mean, everybody does this now. So that's why they travel a lot now, like the day after, right? Like they don't necessarily fly right after the game, which is how it was always done.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And Sleep Doctor will tell you, Pat will, back in the day, told you there were some, and I know some of the players hated it because the wives were like, wait a second, another day, like, aren't you? Yeah. But there are some road trips where you're way better off spending the night having a regular sleep.
Yeah. A good night's sleep is a good
rather
night's
than
sleep.
flying through the middle of the night, getting home.
Sitting in a chair after a game is the worst thing you can do in terms for your recovery.
Before you go, any
right,
intel on Hedl?
None.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't see him at all. I mean, Tocchet sort of. Tuesday, Tocchet said no, still I mean, he's still in protocol. That once he goes in, it was going to take at least 5 days, but no signs. I mean, it's a slow process. I don't think they're in any instinct to rush on this one. No. I mean, it's the one thing you do wonder was, I mean, obviously, he had the major concussion last season. There was some sort of issue early in the year. He insists it was not a concussion. So was it whiplash? We don't know. But, it's been a tough season, 2 seasons for him. So obviously there's big concern about that. And but we didn't have any sign of him pregame Tuesday. So what his actual status is. We're 4 days, 4 days into this.
Unlikely for the Rangers though. So you're probably early next week at the very best.
Yeah, I mean that's it's tough. It's tough. And that's a player, like, listen, he's a player that's been useful. I mean, obviously he's not like, you can see the sort of the reason why he's never going to be a true number 2 center. But there's a lot of smart stuff, and the wheels matter. And the puck has been at the right end of the ice with him on the ice since he's joined the Canucks. Like, he has been a positive contributor to this team. He has made the team better. There is absolutely no doubt.
Patrick Johnston, he's anxiously confident or confidently anxious about the Vancouver Canucks down the stretch.
I think it's confident, definitely confidently anxious. Yes, I can tell you I'm anxious about this team for sure.
Thank you.
See you guys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
The final throes of winter means, yes, it is the final throes of roll up to win. And that, unlike the end of winter in Canada, the end of roll up to win is cause for sadness. It's also cause for urgency. You need to get yourself to Tim Hortons, download the Tim's app, and get swiping in time to win something. Put something in the account, if you will. A free donut, a free coffee for that afternoon coffee run. Perhaps it's $1,000 Rakuten cash prize, a vacation from Sell-Off Vacations, or even a 2025 Volkswagen ID Buzz. It's the tradition like no other. Roll up to win. Go do it.
Indeed.
Folks.
Rob Williams is the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and its sports vertical Offside. He joins us on Thursdays. And Rob, got to ask you the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Do the playoffs start tonight? Have they already begun? And what's your confidence level in these Canucks making it?
Feels like it's already begun. I feel like for me, that Montreal game, the Montreal and the Calgary game, the back-to-back, that really felt like, okay, they're really digging in here. And then they had that slip up against Utah, and it felt like, the way they've been playing for weeks before that. But nevertheless, I do think that they're in kind of that, I don't know, like, this man so tight like a playoff game feel, I think is now here with the Canucks, and I think it's going to be like that down the stretch. Do they make it? I feel like it's a bit of a coin toss, but I do think that St. Louis probably is the stiffest competition in terms of the fact that their schedule is just so weak down the stretch. They've got the easiest schedule remaining. The Canucks have one of the toughest. So needless to say, tonight's game in St. Louis is a rather big one for both teams.
You would have felt better about it if they had beaten Utah, right? Like if they had beaten Utah and followed that up with the Winnipeg win, I think everybody's pretty convinced that this team is ratcheting up the intensity. Does tonight prove that they have ratcheted up the intensity? If Utah is the only blemish here of late, do you think that proves to the fan base they are ready?
Yeah, I mean, I think every night, right, is gonna go towards proving that. I do find it. I think it's kind of funny at this time of year where we put, obviously, like, these 4-point games are so important, but I feel like we almost put too much importance where we're like, okay, if they win, like,
they're in.
Yeah, they're in, and if they don't, they're not, and it's like, Utah beat the Canucks. Wow, a big 4-point game. Their next night, the Canucks pick up a win against Winnipeg, and Utah loses against Edmonton. They're back to square one where they were a couple nights before. So it's just every game matters, right? You just need to pick up points in any which way that you can. And this road trip is going to be a stiff test for the Canucks. Like, it's not, it does not get very easy down the stretch for them.
Rob, you have been a Brock Boeser stan, and God bless you, Rob. You have taken on all comers on social media. Do you feel some vindication and validation after number 6 scores 2 the other night?
Yeah, the one that really pissed people off is I pulled up the stats. If you look at the scoring leaders on the Canucks, there's 2 players that are tied in points right now. One is too slow, can't play without JT Miller. The other one is the toast of the town, having a great season. And I agree, having a great season. I'm speaking about Brock Boeser and Connor Garland. Would you believe that they're tied in points right now? Boeser's played fewer games. I'm not trying to say that Boeser's had a better year or the same year as Connor Garland. Of course not. Like, we can see Garland drives play. But it just kind of goes to show, like, Boeser's not having a good year, and yet, he hasn't fallen off a cliff in terms of the counting stats, at least when you compare him to those of Connor Garland. My main point here on Boeser is that we shouldn't be doing the thing that the Canucks management seems to be doing, where player has one bad year, we write him off, and they're done. And the player has one good year, and let's extend them. Let's give them whatever they want. To me, players have down years, players have off years, players have bounce back years. The job of management is to figure out when a guy's done and when a guy's having a down year. Because if you just pay guys off of recency bias, you're not going to be getting too many bargains there. And I'm not saying that Boeser is a bargain. I'm not saying that they should give Boeser whatever he wants. I just really find it odd that they seem to have no interest in Brock Boeser and seem to just want to let him walk. And the point I keep coming back to is the prices in free agency to replace him are not going to be cheap. I know everyone scoffs at the $8 million that he's going to get, but like, what's Nikolai Ehlers going for? Like, I think people think that everyone else, like, I think fans think that, maybe they'll get Sam Bennett for $8 million and Nikolai Ehlers for $7 million. Like, that's not happening.
They're not convinced that he's going to score 30 again, right? I mean, that's for the fans. They think that Garland's motor running is just proof that he's amazing, and because Boeser can't skate as well. I mean, I think it's just that. But I think from the Canucks perspective, I don't think they're convinced that he's a 30-goal scorer, that he can do that night in or season in, season out. Don't you think that's the bottom line ultimately?
Perhaps. I mean, and that's fine. Like, if you think that he's just not that guy, I mean, I don't know. If you thought he wasn't that guy, why didn't you trade him last offseason when he was coming off 40 goals? You would have got something for him. So that's just sort of the thing for me, is that if they weren't convinced about him, like, why not trade him sooner when he pumped up his value? It's like he pumped up his value as high as it's probably ever going to be, and then they just played him out. Like, if they knew he wasn't this guy, why keep him and now try to to trade him for pennies on the dollar. I don't really understand.
Well, and the irony is they need him down the stretch here. They need him to score goals in the next 14 games, which will kind of go against what they are thinking about him. Like if he scores goals here down the stretch and helps them into the playoffs, they kind of get caught between the rock and the hard place of, oh, he really did score important goals for us, but we've been sort of in our mind that he doesn't have that value for us.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get why, hey, maybe he's not going to age well, right? Like maybe in 3 years, he's not going to be as good as, you think he's going to really drop off. And that's a fine opinion to have. But he scored 40 goals, not 30 goals. He scored 40 goals last season, not 5 years ago. Last season scored 40 goals. He's still got the shot. He still can tip in pucks in front of the net. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's a good player. To me, he's having he was in a dreadful slump. He was virtually invisible in recent weeks. Don't get me wrong, but he's still a guy that he's done it recently. So I don't understand why we would think that it's just gone forever and we're never going to see it again.
Rob Williams going LeBron, not one, not two. You're really endearing yourself to basketball, Phil, on that one, Rob. You have a nominee for Canucks Unsung Hero, sir. Please state your case before the court.
Who would have ever thought that I'd be making this case a few years ago? But to me, the unsung hero is Tyler Myers, right? The guy that I think, when he was making $6 million a year and basically the entire length of that contract that Jim Benning signed him to he was a whipping boy in Vancouver, right? Yep. Playing too many minutes, making big loud mistakes. I think back to that. I think it was against St. Louis in overtime where he falls, wipes out every player on his team in overtime, and the Canucks go on to lose in OT. Those are the moments I think we think of when we think about Tyler Myers. But last season, I thought he settled down pretty nicely. And this season, I think he's had a really nice year for the Canucks. And he's not a guy that you hear about a ton. He manages to stay healthy. He's playing over 20 minutes a night. If you look at total ice time for the entire season, only Quinn Hughes has logged more minutes than Tyler Myers. He's one of their most used guys on the penalty kill, which has been excellent this season. He's managed to contribute offensively more than he has in years past. He's playing a very, very important role for this team as a top four every night defenseman, which I think we all thought, hey, he's going to be a bottom pairing guy at this stage in his career. I think he's been really good for them, and I think he is their unsung hero this season.
I love it, and he's so often an unsung hero is for a third or fourth line contributor that is potting some goals. Not often we've seen a guy that you're just going to give this award to because of general contributions, and he's also added a little bit of swagger to this team. He's actually added a little personality on the ice I'm talking about, and even off. As you know, he's eminently available to speak to everybody as well.
Yeah, he's like the go-to guy on when they have a 4-1 loss and nobody did anything particularly well. Tyler Myers always seems to be the guy to come out and answer questions calmly in the media. I'm not saying that he deserves the award for that reason, but yeah, he's had some great. I remember I was at that game in Anaheim and he scored that absolute beauty. He's had some nice moments for the team this season. I feel like he's one of these guys that when he scores a highlight reel goal, I think that gets fans out of their seats. And it's not like, Elias Pettersson scores a highlight reel goal that brings it to another level. But I think there's something about a Tyler Myers beauty that gets fans excited to see that guy score goals.
Yeah. Luke Schenn won 2 years ago. He was the first non-forward to win since Eddie Lack in 2013-14, but only one. Did Garland win last?
Who won last year?
Joshua.
Okay,
but Luke Schenn's the only defenseman to win the award since Bieksa in 2007.
Yeah. I think it would be really neat to see him win it, especially just because, like, have we ever seen a whipping boy like a former whipping boy
turn
kind
unsung?
Of change,
yes.
Change the narrative and become an unsung hero. I think that's why.
No, good shout, Rob. I love it. Okay, they have a new slogan. I guess this is in time for the playoffs, or at least the stretch drive, where moments become memories. I want your 2 cents on that, but perhaps more importantly, you weren't able to. You know what? I talked to us last week about quarter season packs because you were still doing digging, but you've done digging and written on that now.
Yeah, where moments become memories is a new Canucks commercial. Apparently, it was out a little bit before. I guess I just missed it. I hadn't seen anybody really talk about it though. But they've got their new season ticket ad out. Everyone always has comments on those, so those are always kind of fun to look at. I thought this was really interesting. The Canucks they've been selling quarter season ticket packs ever since they moved into Rogers Arena, then known as GM Place in 1995. They used to be called Ice Packs. The Vancouver Grizzlies had Jam Packs. And they've been an affordable, a more affordable way for fans to become members, season ticket members of that ilk. And apparently these are going away. They're not, if you already have a quarter season pack, I haven't heard anyone I know that I've spoken to that are quarter season ticket packs holders that have been told that they're going away. But if you inquire right now about a quarter season ticket pack for next season, they say they're not unavailable. Apparently, it's going to be replaced with what they're calling a partial pack. I'm assuming they're going to have a fancier name for it when they roll it out to the public. But a partial pack is what I heard, which gets me thinking, okay, what does that mean? Is that going to be less than a half season ticket pack? And I think the real clue in this is what they did this last season. For the first time ever, quarter season ticket packs did not offer all of the games. The one game that was missing, of course, the most expensive ticket, which is the Toronto Maple Leafs, presumably because if you take that game out of quarter season ticket packs, you now have a lot more inventory to sell for single game buyers, which of course is at a higher price. So if I were to hazard a guess right now, it would be, if they have some other new pack, it would be the one they take out all the most desirable games that they can sell for higher on single game packs and remove those from the quarter packs.
Gosh,
why don't they have a crap pack? Have the most accessible dollar value pack and put in Tuesday versus Nashville, put in Sunday night versus Columbus. Just do all of those games.
The subprime mortgage pack.
Yeah, but
I think that's what this is going to be.
Yeah,
I think this is what this is going to be. I think
it's
the partial pack might as well be the crap pack, but I don't know if they're going to be going for crap prices or not. So
you get, speaking of working on the names, fellas, the crap pack.
No, you don't like it? You don't like it?
Doesn't quite have that panache, Blake. Not going to lie.
I've never been.
Okay, well, we'll look for that, Rob. No one does a better job of covering Rogers Arena and the enterprise and activity of going to Canucks games than you. Enjoy the match in St. Louis tonight. We'll catch up next week.
Thank you.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So, Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where you extend your game night with a staycation in downtown Vancouver. Book a Harrison Price rate here at the Wall exclusively. Call 604-331-1000. Tell them we sent you. Some blackout date supply based on availability. Blake's favorite part of the show, Safeway's My NHL Picks, where he is rocking after 3 weeks.
We should really label it pick me ups, because it just makes me feel better about myself. Because
as it should. 11-4 after 3 weeks. He's already winning prizes from Safeway. I got to say, I'm shook. I didn't see this coming.
Yeah, you're probably a tad disappointed, I think, deep down. I can take that. It's okay. As for this week's picks, reputation on the line. Heavy NHL schedule today. So a lot of my picks are coming from today. In fact, 4 of my 5 are from today. Washington over Philadelphia here late in the season. The Capitals, of course, pushing not only for their own sake, but for the sake of Alexander Ovechkin. I've gone out on a limb on the Canucks over the Blues. The Golden Knights at home to the Bruins seems like a pretty good pick for me. And, anybody versus the Sharks seems pretty safe. And then I'm going to a Sunday game where the Florida Panthers host the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Panthers starting to form themselves into the playoff-ready machine that they have been for the last couple of years. So, there's my 5 picks, 11 correct ones so far, and we'll see if the trend continues as I try to amass my Scene Plus points and get access to fabulous grocery deals and become a Scene Plus points tycoon. I think I'm well on my way.
Took him 3 weeks to move into tycoon status.
Well, this segment brought to you by Resurrection Spirits, folks. The S&P G&T season is just around the corner. The spring equinox has sprung, and that means it's time to start thinking about those days in the sun where you just need that perfect iced cocktail. And Resurrection Spirits has partnered with Sekeres and Price to bring you the Sekeres and Price gin. This is a deeply complex gin done locally in East Vancouver. So you can buy Canadian, buy BC, in fact, here. And if you use the code SNP, S&P, you get $5 off. ResurrectionSpirits.ca, so you can have your S&P, G, and T.
Canada and Mexico tonight from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles in a CONCACAF Nations League semifinal. They win this, they're through to the final on Sunday, likely against the United States, who has Panama. The best part, this game is on TSN 7:30. No conflict with the Canucks. You can move from one game to the next. Jesse Marsh said earlier in the week his backline will be the same 4 names we've become accustomed to: the former Whitecaps Alfonso Davies and Derek Cornelius, Moise Bombito, Alistair Johnson, Steven Eustachio in the midfield, Kyle Larin and Jonathan David up front, although Promise David and Daniel Jebison, the 2 new Canadian strikers that we've patriated, could feature here, and we'll see where else he goes in the midfield. And then in goal, that's the big one, Blake. Where is it going to be? Dane St. Clair of Minnesota? Is it going to be ex-cap Max Crepeau, has lost his starting gig in Portland? James Pantemis of CF Montreal? We think it's St. Clair, right?
Probably, yeah. Let's see. But here's the thing: Crepeau is much better with the ball in his feet than Dane St. Clair is. So against the U.S., if this was a game against the U.S., to me, it's St. Clair, because you need the shot stopping of Dane St. Clair, who might be amongst the best shot stoppers in Major League Soccer. But I don't know that Mexico will pepper him as much as the United States would. And if that's the case, Crepeau's a better guy to play with the ball. So I don't know. I don't know what Jesse's going to decide.
Closer to home, Jesper Sorensen, Caps head coach, says Ryan Gauld, Sam Adekugbe a couple of weeks away. He's going to provide an update later in the week. Caps are home Saturday to the Chicago Fire. Then they're at Toronto next Saturday. Then they're home for 2, that CONCACAF Champions Cup quarterfinal against Pumas, and then against the Colorado Rapids. So I'm looking at that Rapids game on April 5th going, that might be the spot where we see Ryan Gauld and Sam Adekugbe.
And then the new international player, Emmanuel Sabi, is training with the team. So he could contribute this week, which is something.
Looking to go 5-0 in MLS play. And as we've mentioned all year, Caps are fun. If you don't have something going on Saturday, get yourself to BC Place.
Yes.
To watch this team that pushes forward, ball at feet, shots, chances. They have been the best story in MLS through the first month. Blue Jays president Mark Shapiro says he's optimistic that the Jays and Vladdy Guerrero will find a deal that works for both parties. And he says that because, A, the gap isn't all that big, but B, both sides want a legacy Blue Jay. Management wants to lock him up on a multi-year, a 15-year, 14-year deal, something of that order. And Vladdy wants to stay there as well. Shapiro did acknowledge that single game ticket sales are down, and said, "Look, they're hungry for a winner. They're waiting to see if the Blue Jays are going to do any winning this year." There's also lots of Blue Jays tickets available for the Seattle series this year, but there's some significant context around that. Number one, of course, you don't have Canadians traveling to the United States as more, but perhaps more importantly, it's in May, and so that makes it very difficult for the people in the interior, Alberta, Saskatchewan. It's hard to draw from Western Canada when the kids are still in school. When it's July, August, families make a vacation out of it. A little different when the school year is on. We know Jose Barrios will start opening. It's 1 week from today. Blake Jose Barrios will make the start for the Jays at home against Baltimore. It will be Logan Gilbert for the Mariners at home to the Athletics. Just the Athletics. They do not have a city of origin this year. George
They're like
Kirby.
share. They're like the share of sports teams.
Yeah,
just
they'll
one name.
play out of Sacramento, but they didn't think enough of Sacramento to put Sacramento in the team name this year. Of course, they're on their way to Las Vegas. M starter George Kirby has been shut down with a shoulder. He says he's hoping to play catch soon. Likely means Emerson Hancock, the 6th pick in the 2020 draft, is going to start the year in the M's rotation. He made 12 starts last year, 15 in his career. The IOC has a new president. It's their 10th in history. Kirsty Coventry wins the presidency on the narrowest of margins on the first ballot over Sebastian Coe, who ran the 2012 London Olympics, and Juan Antonio Samaranch Jr., of course, his father presided over the IOC for years. Coventry is a Zimbabwean who lives in New Jersey. She's a five-time Olympian, twice a swimming champion. And staying with, I guess, the intersection of politics and sport. Not that the IOC does politics, Blake.
No,
couldn't possibly.
Just for the greater good.
March into stadiums under flags, play anthems, but we don't do politics. Our new prime minister, Mark Carney, skating with the Edmonton Oilers today. And if you were learning about Mark Carney, like many of us are, grew up in Edmonton as an Oilers fan, played goalie, but as all old goalies, they don't want to put on the pads. And frankly, if I was him, I wouldn't want to stand in the cage against McDavid or Draisaitl either. So he's skating as an out player at Oilers practice today, and all the reports out of Ottawa anticipating an election call on Sunday. So going to the polls.
And I understand him wanting to use that pole to get on the ice with Connor McDavid, but the Oilers are a bit of a polarizing brand.
Well, it's funny because he sort of said, well, I root for the Oilers and the Senators now. But, of course, if you're prime minister, and especially if you win next month, you will be rooting for all 7 Canadian teams.
That's good politics. You want good politics? You cheer for the Stanley Cup to return north of the border for whatever market.
That's right. Our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from yesterday. We asked which free agent should the Canucks re-sign? Brock Boeser, Pius Suter, both, or neither? Blake, what won the poll?
Suter.
Indeed. Percentage?
43.
Pretty good, Blake. 46.
Yeah.
The surprising part was that neither finished second, at least for me. 22%. It outvoted both that got 20%.
Brock's low number for me is the surprise. 11%.
11%.
Like, this is Brock freaking Boeser, everybody.
See,
this is the flow.
I think one of the issues is we put up the AFP analytics projections on these contracts.
Scared a lot of people. Yeah.
Boeser was 7 by 9. Suter was 4 at just under 4. And I don't think a lot of people have yet adapted to the new salary cap world with a $7 million jump in the cap a $4 million player from yesteryear is not going to be the same as a $4 million player come July 1st. You know, people are saying, what, 9 for Brock? You'll be lucky to get 6. No. Brock's going to get paid. All it takes is one team. Teams have cap space. GMs are going to spend like drunken sailors. Some of them won't sweat the term because they won't be around anyways. So, look, is he going to get 9? I'm not sure about that. We'll see how the end of the season goes. But I do think he's going to get 8. Not from the Canucks, or at least not from the Canucks on a long-term deal. But I do think Brock's going to wind up making good money. Kyle says, I think you have a higher chance of replacing Suter with a lower dollar amount. Again, may not have adapted yet there, Kyle. Josh, at those totals, neither. Aaron, P.F. Suter's having a career year. Brock is asking for too much. I would rather test the market or trade. Time now for Errors and Omissions. It's brought to you by our friends at Ben Moss, a Canadian company with a history dating back more than 100 years. They're committed to customer satisfaction. Check out the large selection: Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. They got mined diamonds available with payment plans to suit your needs. 5 locations in BC: Abbotsford, Victoria, Chilliwack, Willowbrook, and Langley. Coquitlam Center. Ben Moss, shine bright. I have but one. I will take responsibility. Our poll question yesterday, we tagged the @AFP account as opposed to the AFP Analytics account. I'm sure the fine folks at Agence France Presse were a little confused as to why they had Canucks Twitter in their mentions talking about 9 million being too much for Brock. Of course, Agence France Presse has 2 million plus followers, so perhaps they didn't even see the replies at all.
Maybe, yeah. Well, maybe they like to be thought of as heady NHL, experts too. Might have been flattering for them. Who knows?
Anything to self-report? Anything from the inbox?
No, nothing in the inbox.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky. Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific weekdays. Although early starts next week, so we may be early next week. Stay tuned for that. We'll let you know. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about and keep it local.